Erica with Launching Legacies. Welcome to our daily devotional. So we are on day 3 of our devotional series on identity, personhood, and purpose. So I want to kind of break down some issues that we have with personhood. And personhood is actually kind of interesting because, for one, most people don't even recognize it as a part of a person's configuration. I never hear people say, I just want to work on my personhood. We don't talk about it like that. We often use it as really, we just don't talk about it at all. I mean, we often confuse it for our identity. That's very common. And then subsequently, we sometimes think that it's our driving purpose. Like certain aspects of personhood become a driving force for us. And so I want to talk about that, about the drive that people have in order to establish their personhood. So let's look really briefly at this image here. Remember, this is the house. The foundation is the identity. And we talked about that. Our identity is found in Christ. We are children of God, created in the image of God in his likeness. And then we have purpose at the very top, which is the banner over the house. And that banner is, our purpose is to glorify God, right? And then in the middle is this house. And we talked about it before, but the house is dynamic. So personhood is dynamic, meaning it's ever changing. And so as we think about personhood and we talk about specifically about a drive in personhood, for one, we want to make sure again, and I want to always be clear to say this, that personhood is not identity and it is not purpose. And it's a distinct part of who we are, and it's important to understand personhood in the sense that if we keep personhood intact and as its own thing, and our understanding of it is clear that it's dynamic and ever changing, then we resolve a lot of upset and distrust that we have with God because of the shifting and the changing in our lives. In other words, God's intention is that we don't hold anything so tightly that we're not willing or able to give it up if he requires that, or if it's what's best for us. And so that means that we're going to come into places in our life that will change, even if we think that we can't live without them. They'll be altered, or they'll be different maybe than we can understand or we can conceptualize. And we need to be able to trust God with that he really has designed our unique personhoods with intention. And in the personhood comes several different components. So I want to kind of focus on that. When we are driven to become or be something in life that's a part of our personhood, and that drive towards that area becomes our whole life focus, then we become off balance, because what we're seeking is experiences, right? And so an experience is a part of personhood, the things that we've gone through. For example, my level of education is part of my experience. It becomes a tool for how I do things, but it's just that. It's just a tool. I'm not made of my degrees by any mean, way, shape, or form. It's not who I am. It's just something I've acquired. I took tests, I followed procedures, I went through a process, and I gained this education, but it doesn't make me. And so if I felt like my drive in life had to become a doctor, and if I became that doctor, then I would be fulfilled, then I would be sorely mistaken. Because as valuable as my doctorate might be today, or in certain avenues, there are many places in my life, and many places I'm sure I can imagine in my future, in which the doctorate is insignificant. For example, in interpersonal relationships, my friends don't call me Dr. Erica. Why? Because if they're my friends, they call me Erica. They relate to me as who I am, not what I've achieved. My daughter doesn't call me that. And so it's of no value. My doctorate is of no value when I'm in interpersonal relationships. I'm not going to get married and ask my husband to call me by a title. It's just something I earned. It's not who I am. And so I quickly understand that being in the position of drive towards an expectation or degree or education or some type of experiential thing is worthless, because it doesn't give me value in every place of my life. And so although I may achieve a goal of accomplishing educational attainment, it cannot be the goal of my life. It cannot set my identity. It cannot be my livelihood, because in many places of my life, it will be insignificant and have no value whatsoever. There are places where it does have value. And for those places, sure, there's an appreciation and a value for the attainment. But that's pretty much it. It's a tool. And I use it as such. But sometimes we get things skewed, right? Sometimes we get confused. And in the worry and the suffering or the sacrifice that leads to that attainment or that experience, we can lose our understanding of what's truly valuable. And so we find ourselves seeking experiences or achievements in order to feel important or enough. And that can be a problem. Also, we find in the area of personhood, we find that often a lot of times people just are not happy with the house that they have, right? And so we look at personhood and we see it as a house, and a lot of times people are just, I just always want something remade. I always want to be reevaluated. I always want things to shift because I don't feel confident. I don't feel secure. I don't feel enough in the personhood that I've gotten, right? My gifts are not enough, right? But gifts can be developed, so you can have different or better gifts in that what you put your time into in personhood can be altered to some degree, right? You can say, I'm not very talented in something. Well, practice. So get some training in that area, and you can develop talents, right? You can develop skills, and some of them are God-given and they can't be paralleled because God has given it to us in a unique way. But most of our personhood is so dynamic that we can invest time and energy into anything to make it better or different in some way. Just like the education. If you wanted more education, by all means, seek it out and get it because it's available, right? And so that can change the dynamics of your personhood, but the intention and the focus needs to be very clear. Am I changing, investing, or moving in this in order to feel good enough or valuable in some way? Is my drive in this direction greater than it needs to be? Because everything I can work to achieve, I can also lose instantly. The school I went to could lose its accreditation and nobody will value my degree anymore. It hasn't happened often, but it's happened before. And so it could happen to me. It could be any type of thing that could happen. Divorces happen and marriages fall apart, right? People die and relationships fall apart. So I can never put in personhood so much value that if I lose a part of it, or if it's changed or altered, I can no longer succeed. I can no longer feel like I am doing something valuable in life. I can't put my purpose in my personhood. I can't say this is why I was created. I know I was created to be a mother, and this is what my whole life, all I've been focusing on toward is being a mother. I'm very sorry for that person. Why? Because motherhood can come and motherhood can go. And some people never even get it. Sometimes it never comes for people. And they'll be wishing for it and hoping and desiring to be experiencing it and never have it. And it's interesting because sometimes if we skew this part of personhood greatly, then we really have developed idols, right? I want a relationship so bad that I'm willing to defy whatever God says. I'm willing to do things that I ought not be doing. I'm willing to lie to people to keep it. I'm willing to degrade myself or put myself in a position that's inappropriate. You have put something in that relationship above even God. And that's problematic because God is the foundation that holds the house up. And so now you've shifted the things that are supposed to be on top are on the bottom, and the things that are supposed to be on the bottom are on top. And we all know that's dishevelment. And so it creates its own problem when personhood is out of skew. But we also see in personhood is like jealousy and comparisons, right? My house is not as big as their house, right? The life and experiences I've had, the gifts and talents that I possess, the things that God has blessed me with are not as great or not as big as this person's, and therefore I can't deal with it. I don't like it. I have a despising attitude towards it. I'm I'm envious, that I need something that someone else has. And this part of personhood becomes very interesting. And it's this place of covetousness, right? I need to have the life that somebody else has. Not knowing how they got it. Not realizing the sacrifices that had to be made for it to be built. Some walls had to be knocked down for their house to be renovated, just like walls need to be knocked down for your house to be renovated, right? If things are going to change, dynamics in a life are going to be different. And if they're dynamic, then you need to know that there was a starting point to get to this ending point. And many people look at the ending point and think that they covet that ending point that they see in other people, not realizing what it might have cost them. I find people often will say things to me like, oh, that's amazing that you're doing whatever you're doing with launching legacies. And I'm like, yeah, but the journey in and of itself has been amazing and difficult as well, right? What you might think you is wonderful in my life, you may not be willing to endure the process that gets you to that point. Most often we're not. We weren't built for it, right? Our house that we've established, that God is establishing in us, even in its dynamic nature, was designed and made uniquely for us. God is structuring and leading and guiding and molding our lives. And our personhood as a part of that is being shaped based on the integrity of who He made us to be. But not who He made Sally or Joe or Bill to be. They're not us. And so we look at them and think we want what they have, then we'd have to be them. And being them is not the same thing as being yourself for a reason. God created you the way He created you, making you good enough because you're formed and shaped in Him, but also uniquely and diversely created so that collectively we have a contribution as a big picture. But when we start to think we're all going to be an ear, right? That's what the scripture says. Then we're all coveting the same things. Then we become useless. Because what are we going to do with a big ear? There's nothing else to go with it. There's no brain to process the hearing. There's no mouth to respond to what's heard. It's just a big ear that does nothing. And so be mindful of this place in personhood, that it needs to be well, it needs to be strong, it needs to be solidified in God, in the sense that we know who we are so much that we don't mind if things take change. We're not so dependent on being driven towards a position, an experience, a gifting, or a talent, or a relationship that we can't let God make changes in our lives with freedom. If we struggle with giving God the freedom to dynamically remodel and remake our lives, then we're really struggling with really His design and His desire, which is what leads to His will and His purpose for us. And so there's a place in us that has to always be ready to surrender ours for His. To give Him glory, a surrender has to take place. For Him to delight in the works that we do, and for those works to really show forth to all men who He is, there has to be a place of sacrifice. And so the personhood of us needs to be ready always to be remodeled and revised. Being made different, being made better, being made one with the Creator. Something that needs to happen. Can't happen if we're struggling with trying to be something or be someone else. And so I'm going to be praying for us. I'm praying that we would all look at our personhood, look at the dynamics of our life that are always able to be changed. Thank God for all the blessings that are there, but also say, God, I want to offer back to you this personhood. I want to offer back to you my education, my experiences, my talents, my goals. I want to offer you back this ambition or this drive to become this, that, or the other. And I want to say to you, God, always get glory, even if it means you have to take a part of this away. It's a tough prayer, but we should be able to say it. God, I always want to give you honor. I always want to honor you. I always want to bless you, even if it means you got to take something from my personhood away. That's not God's intention to do it, but it's His intention that we be willing to sacrifice whatever it is for His glory. That's His intention. Are you able to do that? Can you make the changes that are necessary to give me the glory? Is that your true intention? That it is. thank you for joining us today, and we will see you again tomorrow for another devotional series. Not the devotional series, another portion of this devotional series. Until then, be blessed.